Being facilitated by the Royal Grenada Police Force. I'm Leslie Ann Johnson. It's good to have you as always. And as usual, we have with us Superintendent Vannie Kerwin, Officer in charge of Community Relations. We also have with us today Inspector Randall Batiste, and he'll be dealing with traffic. So today we'll be looking at the designated business days, the opening of new businesses, resumption of motor vehicle inspection, and reminders under the Act. Without further ado, I'll turn you over to Superintendent Vannie Kerwin.
Good morning, Ms. Johnson, and good morning to Grenada, Carriacou, and PT Martinique, and the wider world. Those of you who are viewing or listening to us wherever you are, welcome to another press brief from the Royal Grenada Police Force. We want to again start by thanking the media for carrying these press briefings to the nation and to the world, informing the population as to what is happening under our state of emergency. Now, as Grenada continues into this state of emergency, this morning the RGPF, once again, is here to provide an update to the nation on operational issues, the designated business days, the opening of new businesses, and reminders to the public, as we have been doing for the last few weeks. As usual, I'm going to start with the operational issues of the RGPF for the week that has just gone. Last week, we reported a decline in arrests. However, this week we have seen heightened activities among the population, leading to increased calls for police services and increased arrests for violations under the Emergency Powers Act. This is unfortunate because we continue week after week to advise the public of the need to adhere to the Act and avoid violations, because this is what is going to keep us safe. We have also received a few reports of domestic disputes for the past week. Our largest single arrest, however, was on Friday, April the 24th, 2020, where 11 persons were arrested in the Woburn area, violating Section 9 of the Emergency Powers Act, which speaks to the restrictions of social gathering and particularly put the focus and the emphasis on the host and on the attendees of these events. These individuals, at a time when we should be under curfew, chose to ignore the regulations and all of the protocols that have been put in place and find themselves in a party with DJ, food, and drinks. We have had a few arrests of persons lighting fires without permission, which is prohibited at this time of the year, as announced previously and continue to be put out there to the public. Yesterday, April 28, 2020, police uprooted 42 marijuana trees in the Bocas area of St. George's, ranging from 1 to 3 feet. However, no arrest was made in this operation. We have responded to several calls of persons not adhering to voluntary quarantine in accordance with Regulation 16, Subregulation 8. This remains a concern to the authorities, and we strongly urge persons to abide by these instructions, as it carries a penalty under the Act. It is an offense under the Act if you're advised to be quarantined and you're failing so to do. We have received a few reports of harassment and threats to either persons who were tested or are quarantined because of the virus. We urge the public to be understanding in these difficult times, and we will take the necessary action for violators of these procedures. The RGPF has created a task force led by experienced detectives geared towards focusing primarily on solving our unsolved murder. We have reported in recent weeks that we have 3 unsolved murders this year, and we're vigorously pursuing every lead we have in an attempt to bring those responsible to justice. The Commissioner of Police and the Executive of the Police Force considered very highly the need for Grenada to remain safe and secure, and the need for us to ensure that all perpetrators of crime be brought to justice. In this light, having those 3 matters unresolved is unacceptable to the Executive of the Force, who sought to put a task force in place to ensure that focus and attention is directed towards solving these matters. I can confirm 2 deaths in the last week alleged to be suicide. However, investigations into these deaths are continuing. All police operations in support of the state of emergency are continuing. Our vehicle checkpoints are in place. Our roadblocks continues. Our patrols continues. Our drone surveillance and the enforcement of the Emergency Powers Act regulation have continued over the last week. Parish boundaries again are collapsed, but we maintain our presence to monitor and control movements of people. Now let me turn my attention to the designated business days and new businesses opening for the current week. According to Regulation 2, Sub-Regulation 3, the designated business days for this week for Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique are Monday, Wednesday, Saturday, and Sunday, or any other day designated by the Commissioner of Police acting on the direction of the Cabinet of Grenada. Business times this week remains 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. for Grenada and 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. for Carriacou and Petit Martinique. Now, this is a change from what we have announced last week with regards to Carriacou and Petit Martinique, which were expected to have their business days on the same time or have the same time as Grenada. However, the additional hour, was added for Carriacou and Petit Martinique to facilitate the ferry service between both islands. We have announced last week that provisions, or the week before, that provisions are being put in place to ensure that a ferry make 2 trips between the island of Carriacou and Petit Martinique to facilitate shopping. So it was felt important to add the additional hour to allow the ferry to complete those trips. So while Grenada remains 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., Carriacou and Petit Martinique will now be 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Pursuant to Regulation 5 of the Emergency Powers COVID-19 number 5 regulations, the Commissioner of Police, acting on the direction of the Cabinet of Grenada, has authorized the opening of the following new business for this period of the state of emergency. Grenada Lottery Authorities. Beginning Saturday of this week, May the 2nd, 2020, the Grenada Lottery Authorities will recommence operations on the business days to facilitate the paying out of winnings. So if you have won in the last couple of weeks, here is an opportunity to collect that cash. Supermarket delivery for online orders will continue this week as well. Shopping days for medical professionals or medical practitioners, nurses, and police officers will be Thursday, April the 30th from 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. at the Calico Shopping Center at Guave, Sates, and Grenville, and also the Real Value IGA supermarket in St. George. Identification must be presented. Fishing and agriculture. Considerations have already been given for the recommencement of long-line fishing, that is a trawler. Last week, we have brought on stream the commencement of fishing with the smaller vessels and did promise the nation that we were going to give the advice or the information as to when trawler fishing will commence. I am pleased to announce to the nation that consideration have already been given for the recommencement of the long-line fishing with trawlers. As we speak, the authorities are finalizing these arrangements, and we should see action in this area as early as later this week or very early next week. The recommencement of sale for nutmeg and cocoa will happen in the coming week on the business days. This has been a burning issue on almost every press conference we have had in the last couple of weeks. The public continue to clamor for the reopening of those industries to be able to sell and purchase nutmeg and cocoa. I am informing the nation this morning that the authorities are now announcing the recommencement of the sale for nutmeg and cocoa, which will happen next week. Restaurants will remain open this week on the business days for drive-through and takeaway service only, as a continuation of what has been put in place last week. Transportation for barrels and butchers. The clearing of barrels and vehicles at the St. George's Port, which came on stream last week, is progressing nicely and will continue. The restriction on hiring of vehicles, taxis, and buses, which is Section 14 of the Act, was geared towards minimizing clustering and crowd density. Therefore, butchers, farmers, and consignees of barrels are expected to make the necessary arrangement to transport their goods at their expense. And I want to take a minute or two to make some clarity here on this particular point. Last week, I don't think that point got across the way we intended for it to get across, and that left confusion in the mind of a lot of people. Now, the Act says specifically that there should be no hire of taxis or minibuses. However, if you have to carry your barrels from the port, if you have to carry your animal to the abattoir, if you have to carry your farm produce to the market, you are allowed to hire a transportation for that particular purpose. The issue of taxis and omnibus is geared to minimizing clustering of people and not necessarily carrying of goods. I just thought I wanted to make that point clear this week, clearing up what has happened last week. Physical exercising returns for 1.5 hours per day on the business days from 5 a.m. to 6 p.m. either alone or with family members living under the same roof. However, all beaches remain closed. All beaches remain closed. Garages, tire shops, auto parts services, and maintenance services remain open this week from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. on the business days. Vehicle inspection. There have been several calls asking when vehicle inspections will resume. I am elated this morning to inform the nation that the Traffic Department has been successful in its submission for consideration in securing approval for the resumption of motor vehicle inspection. The impact of the COVID-19 epidemic has severely affected motor vehicle inspection operations at the various sites across the island. I am pleased to inform the nation that effective Monday the 4th, 2020, the Traffic Department would be resuming the inspection of motor vehicles at 3 locations across the island. This arrangement is temporary and will commence or will be had on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. I'm going to repeat this. This arrangement is temporary and will be done on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. However, during the first 3 weeks of this operation, only vehicles that were eligible for inspection during the first and second period of 2020 and vehicles not licensed in 2019 would qualify for this service. And I just want to give some explanation here in terms of when we talk about first and second period. The first period for 2020 of vehicle inspection ended February the 14th. The second period for this year 2020 ended on March the 31st. So I'm going to take this again. During the first 3 weeks, only vehicles that were eligible for inspection during the first and second period, which is the end of February, end of March, 15th of February, to end of March, would be given preference in this period for the first 3 weeks. It must be noted that vehicles with registration number with single lettering up to 2,500 and plural lettering up to 250 were not affected by the suspension of motor vehicle inspection, and as a consequence, these vehicles would be exempted from late penalty applied in respect of vehicles that were not inspected during the assigned period. This was a mouthful, so I'm going to take this again. It must be noted that vehicles with registration number with single lettering up to 2,500 and plural lettering up to 250, those were the vehicles that were affected by the suspension of the vehicle inspection. And as a consequence, these vehicles would not be exempted from late penalty fees. Now, I think there is a correction I need to make here. These vehicles were not affected. That is what I should say. Those vehicles were not affected by the suspension. And therefore, if you did not inspect your vehicle then, and you're inspecting it now, you would be expected to pay the late penalty fee. Further, only vehicles from the first and second licensing period will be facilitated during the first 3 weeks. The intention is to facilitate a one-stop shop at each inspection site. So instead of having to be inspected at the site and then go to the inland revenue, the intention here is to create a one-stop shop where you can have the vehicle inspected, you can pay the inspection fee if you have to, and also receive the decal at that same location. Arrangements are being finalized with the Inland Revenue Department to ensure that cashiers are available on site to facilitate payment of inspection fees. License decal will also be issued on site, and vehicle owners and drivers are reminded to have the vehicle insurance certificate in order to complete the entire process. As we announced last week, insurance companies opened as of last week, so there should be no excuses as to why you do not have your inspection certificate in place when you come to inspection on those days. I will just provide now the locations for the different inspections. On Mondays, the National Stadium Car Park, Gate 6, on Mondays. And that is for people in the St. George's area. On Wednesdays, Cuthbert Peters Park at Guave for people in the western side of the island. And also on Wednesdays, at Carriacou Police Station Yard at the Northern District, that's in Carriacou. Fridays, Pearls Airport for the Eastern Division or the eastern side of the island. The arrangement at each inspection site caters for sufficient deployment of inspecting officers and support staff effectively undertake this operation. The fact that some of the inspection sites are only temporary arrangements, we implore persons coming to these facilities to follow the directions given and to observe the personal distancing protocols and the wearing of masks or appropriate face covering. Drivers would be required to queue up and must remain in the vehicle. Officers would provide direction and assistance where required. With every new system, there would be associated challenges, but key to the success of this operation would be the need for the full cooperation of everyone coming to these locations to access the services provided. Just some general reminders. The public is reminded that the 24-hour curfew remains in force. The lifting or partial lifting of these curfews happens on the business days and it's from 5 a.m. to 7 p.m. Effectively, from 5 a.m. to 7 p.m., persons are allowed to leave their home for the businesses that will be open on those days: shopping, insurance services, banks, remittances services, restaurants, and all of the services that are available. You will be able to leave your home to access those services. Curfew again starts at 7 p.m. At this point, we want to take the opportunity again to thank members of the public who have supported the RGPF and the authorities in one way or the other in ensuring that Grenada remains safe as we continue to combat the spread of the COVID-19 virus. We thank you for your calls. We thank you for your support. We thank the corporate public for contributing in the ways that you have to ensure that the RGPF remains viable, remains relevant, and have the capacity to be able to carry out the functions that we have mandated to do. The RGPF are committed to delivering the high standard of service, and notwithstanding the fact that we are under a state of emergency, we continue to do what we do to ensure Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique remain safe. I thank you, and God bless you.
Thank you very much, Superintendent Vanny Kerwin. A lot of information there for us, comprehensive information. Colleagues, good morning. Anybody ready with questions as yet? Mikey, okay, Mikey and then Sherry. Mikey, good morning. Go right ahead.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, colleagues, as well. Just some clarity with regards to the inspection of vehicles on Fridays that has not been designated as a shopping day. What directives are there for persons who may be stopped by police or so? What provisions are in place for that as well?
Thank you for your question, Mikey. And may I indicate before I answer your question the fact that Superintendent Connaught, who should have been with me this morning, unfortunately is not with me, and replacing him this morning with me is Inspector Randall Battis of the Traffic Department. Take this question. Mikey, I think you are correct on that, and that's an error on our part. Going forward, the business days will be Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. So when this consideration were given, it was given with Friday being a business day. However, this week, Friday happens to be May Day, May 1st. And so the business days for this week have changed. So Friday this week is not a business day. And therefore, motor vehicle inspection will not happen this Friday. But going forward, it will be Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays in keeping with what is the established business days of Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. So thanks for your question, and thanks to give us the opportunity to correct this.
Okay. Also, there was a highly publicized incident operation involving the Royal Grenada Police Force at a community in St. George's, I believe it was Fontenoy. Can you shed some light on what really transpired in that operation?
All right, Mikey, just 1 second. I think Inspector Randall Batiste wanted to come in here. Just 1 second. Let's just get something clear.
Okay, morning to everyone. Yeah, I just want to add to what Superintendent Coyne was saying, but in his comments, he will have mentioned that inspection will commence from the 4th of May. So that will take away Friday, the 1st of May. So there is no inspection taking place this week. So we don't have to consider Friday with reference to inspection for this week. So I just wanted to make that clear.
Mikey, with respect to your second question, I do not wish to comment at this stage on the incident that you have spoken of. That matter is receiving investigation. I know that there is a video on social media that is depicting aspect of this investigation. I said last week in our previous press brief that a video only presents part of an incident and it doesn't speak to the whole story. That video did not show the public what was happening before. That video did not say anything about why there were so many people where you saw them. That video did not speak to the activities that these people were involved in prior to when the video started. So this matter has been investigated, and I do not wish to say any more on this because I do not want to prejudice whatever investigation that is likely to follow.
Do you have
okay,
another one?
I can live with that for now. And if you just permit me one more question for now. The police have been engaged, and we can also make reference to some of the videos that we have seen. This current one, then there was an arrest in St. John St. Mark recently, where you see the police engage in a lot of interaction with people. Can you tell us to date, if any, the number of police officers that has been suspected of contracting the coronavirus, or if any at all, are under isolation or quarantine?
To date, Mikey, we have tested over 80 police officers. Unfortunately for us, no one in the police force or associated with the police force and our auxiliary units have been tested positive for the virus. We do have a number of police officers either on voluntary quarantine or on mandatory quarantine, meaning that they've been asked to quarantine. We continue to fight the good fight. We are in the forefront. We put our lives at risk on a daily basis. And yes, we have made several arrests interacting with the public. But by the goodness and grace of God, we remain virus-free in the RGPF. Testing are continuing. A number of tests have been scheduled for this week, going into next week, and we continue to test police officers. As you would appreciate, the risk to us is higher than the rest of the population, and we continue to do what we need to do to keep our police officers safe, ensuring that they wear the mask, ensuring that we distance ourselves as much as is possible when we can. But by the very nature of our operation, it is expected that we are going to come into contact with members of the public because this is what we do. So we take all the precautionary measures to protect ourselves. We continue the testing, and I'm happy to report this morning that over 80 police officers were tested. None have tested positive for the virus.
Thank you, Mikey. Sherry Ann, good morning.
Good morning. Morning. My first question has to do with the shared about the exercising. If there are any restrictions as to where people can use for exercise purposes. And part two to my question, if you can just give us a little more, because I know for weeks questions were posed as it relates to domestic abuse, and I heard you mention this morning. So how many cases were there and how serious?
Sorry, thank you, Sherry. Those domestic disputes that I have spoken of, there have been no violence involved. There have been disputes between, in some cases, family members living in the same household. But I'm happy to report that they're not serious. They're not serious. We have had reports from ranging from one thing to the other, but nothing that jumps out at us in a serious sense of violence. So I just want to say this. With regards to your other question about places that persons can exercise, I've indicated earlier that all beaches are closed. Exercising around the business days. So persons are free to exercise wherever it's convenient to them, except on the beaches because the beaches remain closed.
Go ahead, Sherry.
You said persons can exercise except on the beaches. We do know that number of, I would like to say, fitness instructors that hold different sessions. Does this open up to them? Could my fitness instructor say, well, okay, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, we have time and come to exercise? Can that happen, or it just has to be just?
There's something that I need to clarify to bring some clarity, something I need to say to bring some clarity to your question, Sherry. According to the Act, the Act indicates that persons exercising must do so alone or with family members who live under the same roof. So your exercise instructor should not call up all of his people from different households and say that exercising is taking place. Because according to the Act, you exercise on your own or you exercise with members of your household under the same roof.
Thank you, Superintendent. Any other from you, Sherry?
Not at this time.
All right. Do we have one online? Good morning, Linda.
Good morning. Are you hearing me?
Yes, we're hearing you. Go right ahead.
Yes, my question has to do, I have a number of questions. The first is, Officer Cohen mentioned of 2 alleged suicide. Can you tell us whether or not there are any other deaths that are on the police investigation? Post-mortem to be done officially and the police announced cause of death. My second question has to do with, he said that some of the persons in quarantine are being harassed. Can you explain or tell us what is meant by harassing them? Because earlier we would have had the Prime Minister say that some of these people are threatened. He's now saying they're harassed. So shed some light on the definition of using the word harassed. My third question has to do with, what is the criteria used for opening up a sector? Today, he announced the opening of the National Lottery Authority. Next week, we hear that nutmeg and cocoa are going to be. What is the criteria used by those to officially say a sector is ready for opening on shopping days? Thank you. That's all for now.
Thank you very much, Ms. Shrika. I am not aware that we are investigating any other deaths other than the 2 that I have mentioned. So that's your first question. Secondly, I use the word harass, so I'm going to use the words now harass/threatened, because we do have in a few cases where people are threatened by neighbors, by friends, by other people. Harassed in some sense, meaning that they are being heckled, and threatened in the sense that they have actually been threatened with violence. So that's your second question. Your third question of the criteria for opening up the sector, I am not in a position and do not want to offer a comment. There are different responsibilities by different players in this particular time. There are those who sit and make the decisions, and there are those who communicate and explain the decision. And my task this morning is just to report what has been decided above the level above me. And I'm not in a position to say the criteria that we use to open up any sector or any industry or any businesses.
Good morning, Nancy Maguire.
Good morning. Are you hearing me all right?
Yes, we are. Go right ahead.
Thank you. Good morning from the Grenadian Voice. I have two questions. With more businesses opening, I'm just wondering if this is putting greater pressure on members of the police force to ensure that the businesses and the customers and clients are adhering to the protocols. And secondly, there are reports that some police officers are on the job and they're not in their uniform. Is this on purpose, or is it because every time you go out and you have to change your uniform, wash your uniform? And I'm just wondering if it's a undercover thing or not.
Thank you, Ms. McGuire. The presence of police officers and the new businesses that are opening are not necessarily putting a strain and stress on the police force. Prior to this state of emergency, the whole of Grenada were opened and the police force were functioning. Less of Grenada is open now, and so there is no pressure or stress on the police force currently. We continue to do what we did in the past as we do now. Your second point on police officers being not in uniform, I do not really know how to answer this question because I'm going to tell you why. I haven't heard that police officers who should be in uniform are not in uniform. What I would say to you is the fact that the police force has several departments, uniform departments and civilian clothes department, non-uniform department. So I do not know specifically how to answer your question, but I'll say to you that there are a number of departments of the police force that are plain clothes, meaning they do not wear uniform. And then there are the uniform part or uniform departments of the police force. If you're in a uniform department of the police force, when you're on duty, you're expected to wear your uniform. And from what I have seen and know personally, that has been happening. Those departments that wear plain clothes, they continue so to do.
Thank you, Superintendent. Anybody else have questions? The one from Mikey. Go right ahead.
All right. You said quite a lot, read the motor vehicle inspection. I just need you to clarify something for me, please. For persons whose vehicle expires at the middle of May, for example, and they attempt to have their vehicles inspected, what happens if they fall outside of the designated time for registration? Because we know that there will be a lot of people from the backlog attempting to have their vehicle inspected. So how would that affect them?
Okay, thank you very much, Mikey, for your question. What will happen if the persons that are in the third period, as what you are speaking of, and their license would have expired on the 15th of May and the vehicle yet to be inspected, they didn't get that opportunity, these persons will exercise the same privilege as what the persons that was affected in the second period are doing now. So they will ensure that the vehicle has a valid insurance and it will be okay for them to drive until we're ready to have them inspected and licensed.
Okay. All right. Thanks for that answer. And as well, can you clarify for us, with regards to the National Lotteries Authority being allowed to operate? I know you mentioned for the payment of winnings. Is the operation going to be limited to only that service?
At this point, Mikey, the answer is definitively yes.
Linda, do you have another question?
Yes, I had another question. My question is whether or not the police could tell us if the persons involved in the Subi's accident were essential workers.
Mr. Rika, I am aware of this accident. I know that it is being investigated. At this point, I do not want to disclose whether or not it was or was not essential workers because investigation are continuing. I do not want to prejudice any form of this investigation. I will wait until the investigation is completed, and at a later stage, I will be able to provide all of the answers to the questions you would ask on ongoing matters.
All right, colleagues, any more questions? I think they've exhausted, so we can take the opportunity, Superintendent Kerwin, to make a few words if you have something to say in wrapping up, and Inspector Batiste, if you have a few words to say as well.
Okay, thank you very much, and I want to say thanks for giving me the opportunity to be on the program this morning. I want to encourage the drivers who are going to the different inspection centers or location to have the vehicle inspected. We want you to exercise all the protocols that was explained by Superintendent Corwin, and make sure that you do your own prior inspection before coming to get your vehicle inspected, because we don't want you to make a second or third trip to the location if you realize the time is limited that you have to get your vehicle inspected. So ensure that all your lights are working, ensure that your vehicle does not have any heavy tints, no colored headlamps. Make sure your vehicle is thoroughly cleaned inside and outside, and ensure that you are ready. So as I said, when you do come, you can pass your inspection. Thank you.
Now, we have completed another week, and we are now into a new week of the Emergency Powers Act. As things unfold, the nation will realize that the country is slowly opening back up as more businesses are being opened. I know there is a lot of concern, and a question was asked about it as to whether or not open more businesses put us more at risk. And I want to say this in closing. What really puts us at risk is not necessarily businesses opening. What puts us at risk really is the non-adherence to the protocols that have been put in place to ensure our safety. There are a number of countries around the world that have the economy open and have less cases than some of the countries that had shutdowns. What is important for us in Grenada to pay attention to is the fact that we adhere to those protocols: washing of the hands, wearing of the mask, keeping the physical distancing in place. These are critical for us to do. And I think the focus should be on these protocols. And if we follow and observe these protocols, I am sure we'll be able to mitigate against the spread of the coronavirus. In closing, I want to thank everybody who have contributed one way or the other. I have not been ending these press conferences this week without saying thanks to frontline workers and essential workers, without whose efforts, involvement, I don't think we would have been where we are. The nurses, the doctors, the police officers, the prison officers, the security guard, the supermarket workers, the cashiers, the sanitation workers, the lab technicians, Nawasa, Grenada, and all of these people. Not calling your name doesn't mean that you're not important. It perhaps means at this particular point, I just do not, remember who you are. But every service, every industry, every organization that are in the forefront on the fight against COVID-19, we say thank you this morning. All of the corporate partners who contributed to the police force and other entities, we express our profoundest gratitude to you. Grenada belongs to all of us, and we all have a part to play in ensuring that we remain safe as a destination and that peace and tranquility prevail. And so I implore upon you for what you have done, and I urge you to continue to do more of what you have done well over the last few weeks as we continue to ensure that COVID-19 is beaten in Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We do appreciate. So we have had with us today Superintendent Vani Kerwin in charge of community relations, and of course with us today as well Inspector Randall Batiste from the traffic department. So let us all please just ensure that we do what we need to do. Yes, business days are opening, businesses are opening, but we just need to ensure that we follow the social distancing protocol and ensure that everybody remains safe and as healthy as possible. Thank you so much for being with us. Have a great day, everybody.
Shakalaka, this is Ledneck from the West Point family, reminding all Grenadians to be COVID-19 smart. Stay home, it's just for a short time. We will be back on our feet soon. Alright? Bless.
I say, nah, man. Wood, yo, this is the Don Man Lindy telling you to be COVID-19 safe. Stay home. That way we could play a mass sooner rather than later. Everything will come to pass. You know the thing go, mass must play. How you mean?
Stay up to date with all that's happening with the new National Party, NNP. Send us a message via text or WhatsApp on 405-8683 with your name, email, and constituency. Stay in the know with NNP. Get updated.